George Russell just got the fastest car he has had in years, and somehow, that may be the worst thing that could have happened to him. Because Mercedes is winning. Mercedes is leading. Mercedes has the car everyone wants. But the driver turning that car into a championship weapon is not Russell. It is Kimi Antonelli. 5 wins in a row. A massive lead over Russell. A rookie who was supposed to be protected, now looking like the driver Mercedes must protect. And that is where everything changes. Because priority drivers are not always confirmed with a public announcement. Sometimes they are confirmed by pit wall decisions, by upgrade direction, by who the engineers trust most, by who the team cannot afford to lose points. And right now, Antonelli is giving Mercedes the one argument Russell cannot beat with words: results. Russell waited for Lewis Hamilton to leave. He waited for his chance to lead. He waited for a Mercedes capable of fighting for the title again. Now he finally has all 3. But if Barcelona confirms what the last 5 races have already suggested, Mercedes may not be deciding whether Antonelli becomes the priority driver. They may be deciding how long they can keep pretending he is not. Subscribe to the channel. The first thing to understand is that Mercedes does not need to say Kimi Antonelli is the priority driver for the whole world to feel it happening. That is the uncomfortable part. Formula One fans often wait for one dramatic sentence. A team principal standing in front of cameras. A clear decision. A public order. A moment where the team admits, this is our number one. But in real Formula One, priority usually arrives much more quietly. It arrives through evidence. Through patterns. Through results. Through which side of the garage becomes harder to question. And right now, almost every pattern inside Mercedes is moving toward Antonelli. That is why George Russell is in trouble. Not because he has no speed. Not because he suddenly became a bad driver. Not because Mercedes has abandoned him in public. The problem is more dangerous than that. Mercedes may still be speaking the language of equality, while the championship is already speaking the language of priority. At the start of the season, this was not supposed to happen. Russell was supposed to be the safe center of the team. Lewis Hamilton had left for Ferrari, and that changed everything inside Mercedes. Hamilton was not just another driver leaving a seat behind. He was the most important figure in the modern history of the team. He carried titles, records, emotional weight, and years of authority. So when he left, Mercedes needed stability. They needed someone who could step into the space he left behind and make the team feel whole again. That person was supposed to be Russell. He had been waiting for this moment. He had learned the Mercedes system from the inside. He had already lived through the pressure of being compared to Hamilton. He understood the engineers, the language, the culture, the expectations. And at 28 years old, he looked like a driver entering the perfect stage of his career. Not too young. Not untested. Not past his prime. Ready. That is why Australia mattered so much. Russell won the season opener, and for one weekend, everything looked exactly how Mercedes would have wanted it to look. The old era had ended. The new leader had arrived. The team had survived Hamilton's departure. The story was clean. Then Russell won the China sprint race, and the message became stronger. He was not just emotionally ready. He had pace. He had control. He had the car. He had the chance. And at that moment, Antonelli could still be placed inside the comfortable category Mercedes wanted for him. The future. A brilliant young driver. A long-term project. A name to protect. A talent to grow carefully. That version of the story was easy to manage. Russell would lead. Antonelli would learn. Mercedes would dominate without civil war. But Formula One destroys easy stories when the stopwatch starts telling a different truth. Antonelli did not behave like a future project. He behaved like a current threat. And this is where Mercedes' internal balance began to shift. Because a team can plan hierarchy before the season. But once the races begin, hierarchy has to survive evidence. And Antonelli started producing evidence faster than anyone expected. 5 consecutive victories. A championship lead. A level of calm that did not look normal for a 19-year-old in one of the most pressured seats in sport. This was not a driver asking to be protected from the intensity of Formula One. This was a driver creating the intensity. And when that happens, the team's instincts begin to change. Not because they want drama. Because they want to win. A winning team becomes extremely sensitive to anything that might disturb success. If one driver is turning the car into trophies, the whole organization begins to ask a natural question. How do we keep that going? That question is where priority begins. Not in a headline. Not in a contract. In the daily choices of a race team. Which feedback matters most? Which setup direction feels safest? Which driver's confidence must be protected? Which strategy risk is acceptable? Which side of the garage is carrying the championship? Those questions may sound small, but they shape everything. And before Barcelona, the answers are becoming harder for Russell. Because Antonelli is not just ahead of him. He is far ahead. The gap after Monaco had reached 68 points. That is a huge number so early in a season. But the gap alone is not the most damaging part. The most damaging part is who sits between them. Lewis Hamilton, the former Mercedes icon, now driving for Ferrari, is ahead of Russell in the standings. That creates a brutal picture. Hamilton, the past, is ahead. Antonelli, the future, is leading. Russell, the driver who was supposed to inherit Mercedes, is stuck behind both. That is not just a championship problem. It is a status problem. Because inside a top team, status is not only based on what you have done before. It is based on what the team believes you can deliver next. And Antonelli is forcing Mercedes to believe very quickly. This is why the phrase priority driver is so powerful. It does not always mean the team is sabotaging the other driver. It does not always mean unequal equipment. It does not always mean secret orders or unfair treatment. Sometimes it simply means the team has identified the driver whose championship matters most urgently. The driver whose points must be protected. The driver whose rhythm cannot be interrupted. The driver whose feedback is most aligned with the car's strongest version. And if that is the definition, then Antonelli is already moving into that role. The car works for him. The results support him. The championship table protects him. Russell has explanations. Antonelli has wins. And in Formula One, explanations can be true, but wins are louder. That is the cruelest part for Russell. Because his season has not been a simple collapse. He has had real setbacks. Japan hurt him with a safety car and strategy damage. Canada was even worse, because he was fighting Antonelli for the lead when a sudden power cut ended his race. Monaco turned into chaos, with penalties, confusion, a drive-through, and no points. Mercedes even accepted that communication problems contributed to the Monaco penalty situation. So Russell can legitimately say that the season has not been clean. He can say the championship table does not show every detail. He can say the results are harsher than the full story. And he would have a point. But here is the problem. Formula One teams do not make future-defining choices based only on sympathy for what went wrong. They make them based on what keeps winning. Antonelli keeps winning. That is the line Russell cannot talk around. Canada is the perfect example. For 30 laps, Russell showed that he could fight Antonelli. He matched him. He pressured him. He looked capable of changing the entire conversation. Had the car held together, the story might be completely different. But it did not. Russell retired. Antonelli won. The gap grew. And the team left with two truths. Russell had the pace to fight. Antonelli had the victory. Those truths are not equal. One is encouraging. The other is championship material. And that difference is how priority starts to form. A team may feel sorry for the driver who nearly had the result, but it has to plan around the driver who actually took it. That is why Russell's own words after Canada were so revealing. He said that, right now, it was Antonelli's championship, unless Antonelli lost it. That was an extraordinary admission. Because drivers are trained to keep belief alive. They are trained to say there is a long season ahead. They are trained to project control, even when control is slipping away. Russell did not do that. He described the championship as something Antonelli owned. That sentence may have been honest. It may have been emotionally understandable. But inside the Mercedes story, it was dangerous. Because once the senior driver starts speaking as if the young teammate has control, the team hears it. The paddock hears it. Antonelli hears it. And every future battle begins with that sentence hanging in the air. Right now, it is his. Unless he loses it. That is the sound of a rivalry changing shape. At the beginning, Russell was expected to set the terms. Now Antonelli is the one Russell must disrupt. That is a major reversal. And Mercedes cannot ignore it. Because even if they want to treat both drivers equally, the championship does not treat them equally anymore. A driver leading the championship carries different consequences. If Antonelli loses points, Mercedes risks losing control of the title fight. If Antonelli is taken out by his teammate, the damage becomes enormous. If Antonelli's confidence is interrupted by internal politics, the team risks disturbing the very thing giving it dominance. So the more he wins, the more Mercedes has a reason to protect him. Not emotionally. Strategically. That is priority. And that is why Russell's situation becomes so delicate before Barcelona. Because Barcelona is the kind of race where Mercedes may have to decide how brave it wants Russell to be. If Russell is behind Antonelli, does the team let him attack fully? If strategy splits are available, who gets the safer call? If the drivers are close in the final stint, does Mercedes allow the fight to reach the absolute limit? Publicly, the answer may still be yes. But privately, the pit wall will understand the risk. Antonelli is the championship leader. Russell is the driver trying to recover. Those are not the same pressures. For Antonelli, control protects a title. For Russell, control may feel like a cage. That difference can tear a garage apart. Because the driver ahead in the championship wants the team to avoid unnecessary chaos. The driver behind needs chaos to reopen the fight. That is the central conflict. Russell cannot catch Antonelli by politely following him. But Mercedes cannot risk destroying Antonelli's title campaign just to let Russell prove a point. This is where the word equality becomes complicated. Equal opportunity sounds simple before the season. It becomes much harder when one driver has built a massive lead. If both drivers are level on points, freedom makes sense. If one driver is 68 points ahead, freedom becomes dangerous. Because the cost of an internal collision is not equal. The driver behind loses a chance. The driver ahead may lose a championship advantage. So even if Mercedes gives them the same car, the same meetings, the same official treatment, the situation itself pushes the team toward Antonelli. That is why people miss the real story when they ask whether Mercedes has officially confirmed him as the priority driver. The more important question is this: has the season made him impossible not to prioritize? And right now, the answer is moving closer to yes. Antonelli has done what every young driver dreams of doing. He has made patience look unnecessary. He has made the future arrive early. He has taken the fastest Mercedes in years and turned it into immediate authority. That creates a problem for Russell that no speech can solve. Because Russell waited for this chance. He waited for Mercedes to have a car capable of winning again. He waited for Hamilton to leave the center of the team. He waited for the opportunity to become the leader. Now he has the seat, the car, and the chance. But Antonelli has the momentum. And momentum can become power very quickly. A team starts by celebrating a young driver's success. Then it starts protecting it. Then it starts building around it. By the time the team admits what is happening, the shift may already be complete. That is what Russell must stop. And the only way to stop it is not with politics. Not with media comments. Not with asking Mercedes to remember what he has done before. He has to beat Antonelli. Cleanly. Convincingly. At Barcelona. Because Barcelona is one of the worst possible places to lose if you are trying to argue that the season has been distorted by bad luck. The Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya tells teams the truth. Long corners. Demanding balance. Aerodynamic efficiency. Tire stress. A second sector that exposes whether the car and driver are working together. This is not a track where a driver can easily hide behind chaos. If the Mercedes is strong, it should show. If Antonelli is more comfortable, it should show. If Russell has found an answer, it should show. That is why this race feels like a judgment. Not an official one. A quiet one. The kind Formula One teams make internally before they ever speak publicly. If Russell beats Antonelli, Mercedes has to pause. They have to remember Australia. They have to remember Canada's lost opportunity. They have to treat the rivalry as alive. They have to accept that the senior driver can still be the reference. But if Antonelli beats Russell again, especially at a circuit that suits Mercedes, the priority question becomes almost impossible to avoid. Because then it is not just 5 wins in a row. It is not just Monaco. It is not just the points gap. It is Barcelona too. The track where Mercedes tested the car. The track where both drivers know the machinery. The track where excuses become thin. And if Antonelli wins there, he can reach a 6th Grand Prix victory. That would match Russell's entire career total. A 19-year-old matching the career win count of the teammate who was supposed to guide him. That statistic is devastating because it says so much with so little. Russell has spent years building his career. Antonelli could match his biggest number in one early season surge. And if that happens, the internal logic of Mercedes changes again. Because the team will not just see a young driver with potential.